Welcome to Front Office Pros. Today, we're going to be talking about our best rookie tight end landing spots for Dynasty Fantasy Football.
Hike!
In this episode, Joe and I are going to be talking about the top prospects of the tight end position and where we would like to see them go. Because at the end of the day, depending on where these guys go, could make a huge difference as far as how much we like them. So, Joe, let's talk about the first guy who is the odds-on favorite to be the first one drafted, which is Tyler Warren, 10 out of Penn State. Where would you like to see him go?
Yeah, I picked him for the New York Jets. I think it'd be interesting. Tyler Conklin has moved on, and we did see Justin Fields, support Cole Kmet with the Bears, and so with the tight end utilization there, they don't really have much. They also don't have a ton of depth at receiver, and Tyler Warren's the most complete tight end in this draft as well. You also have guys coming over from the Lions. Their offense coordinator is the Lions passing game coordinator. So you saw how much they like to utilize the tight end with a guy like Sam Laporta. So I picked the New York Jets.
You and I are on the same wavelength here. I said Tyler Warren to the Jets as well. I think when it comes down to it, the reason I said, honestly, there are a lot of reasons that you said I feel the same way about. They don't really have anybody in the offense outside Garrett Wilson. And looking at Justin Fields and what he was able to do in his last year as a starter in Chicago, like you said, I think Cole Kmet was a tight end one. And I think he was close to like 7 or 8. So we know that he could be supported, and because of the lack of other options in that offense, it's barren. They don't really have anybody. Even Tyler Conklin, who they did have, now went over to the Chargers. They only have Jeremy Ruckert, who, he was a tight end at Ohio State, but a developmental guy, but new coaching staff, new general manager. They don't have any allegiance to him. So I'd be shocked if they don't end up, drafting a tight end. Maybe it's not this high, but Tyler Warren makes a lot of sense. Are you enjoying this episode so far? Well, if you are, subscribe to our YouTube channel, smash that like button, and hit the notification bell for upcoming videos. We do videos throughout the year, so you're not going to want to miss what we have in store. All right, let's head over to one of your guys, Joe. Tight end Colston Loveland of the Michigan Wolverines. Joe, where would you like to see the Go Blue tight end go?
Yeah, well, I'd like to see him get reunited with his former coach and go to the Chargers and reunite with Jim Harbaugh. And, we always say a lot of the times it's about who you know and with this league, and who knows him better than Jim Harbaugh, who wanted him, while he was at Michigan, part of recruiting him over there. And he's, the Chargers were interested in Evan Ingram, brought him in for a visit. Ultimately, Ingram chose to go to the Denver Broncos. So they're looking at the tight end position, looking for a difference maker. I know you mentioned they brought in, Tyler Conklin. He's more of a veteran tight end there, but Colston would be definitely a difference maker for them in a potential receiving threat.
Well, Conklin's known for his blocking too. He was
Right.
never really meant for a receiving entity, but he was for the Jets, which I always thought was kind of shocking, as his brother was an offensive lineman as well. But we're 2 for 2, Joe. I also think that Loveland should reunite with Jim Harbaugh in L.A. There was talk that we had thought that maybe they would even draft Brock Bowers last year, just based on the significance of the position for Jim Harbaugh and his offense. Now you got Loveland, who he knows very well with that familiarity in Michigan. You saw him even draft some Michigan players last year. I don't think we'll see if he makes it there. But at the end of the day, whether he does or not, we're saying this is the best spot. And I would agree. I think this is his best landing spot. If he goes there, I'm pretty excited. I
would agree with that. And I do think there's a chance that he falls. I know early on people were expecting him to be in the teens. It seems like that has kind of cooled down a little bit. So I think there is a chance that he does fall to where the Chargers are picking.
Next, we're going to be talking about here is tight end Elijah Arroyo of the Miami Hurricanes. Where would you like to see him go, Joe?
Yeah, I picked the Jacksonville Jaguars for Arroyo.
Interesting.
Yeah, I know, obviously they lose Ingram. I know they have Brenton Strange, but Strange doesn't have any ties to this, to the new, head coach there. No, GM didn't draft him. And I think Arroyo, maybe he's not ready to fully play right away. He could take a year or two to kind of continue to develop. But I think pairing him with a, creative offensive-minded coach like a Liam Cohen makes a lot of sense. And I think he'd really be able to maximize Arroyo's ceiling and get the most out of him.
So I'm going to go with the Tennessee Titans. And the reason why I chose them was for a few reasons. One, odds-on favorite to be the number one pick is Cam Ward. Well, where did Cam Ward play? Miami. So now you're reconnecting Elijah Arroyo with the quarterback. We always say, Joe, that a young quarterback's best friend is a tight end. Now, you may say, well, they got Chickasee McConko there. They do. But the reality is you and I both like him, but he's never been a elite tight end by any means. And he's going into the final year of his rookie contract. So, are the Titans really going to sign him? He was not drafted by either the head coach or the general manager. So I think at the end of the day, bringing a guy like Arroyo, if they really want to see Cam Ward be successful, that's who they end up taking. I think it makes a lot of sense for him to be reunited, with one of his favorite targets out in Miami.
Yeah, that's an interesting spot. I hadn't considered the Titans for him, but I think based on your argument, I mean, that could make some sense.
All right, so next guy we're going to be talking about here, who's got some bloodline, Joe. Tight end Mason Taylor, his father Jason Taylor, former defensive end for the Miami Dolphins. He played in LSU. Where would you like to see Mason Taylor go, Joe?
I'd like to see him go to the Baltimore Ravens.
Wow.
We keep talking about the fact that we think this is the last year for Mark Andrews, and if that is the case, then they draft the predecessor. And I think Mason Taylor could benefit from kind of sitting behind a guy like Mark Andrews for a year before he's fully ready to go. But I think based on, we know the Baltimore Ravens like to utilize the tight end position, they prioritize it, and so I think Ravens would be a great landing spot for Taylor.
I'm going to go in a different direction here. And this one may be a peculiar one, and I guess yours was somewhat peculiar too because you had Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely still there. I'm going to go with the Washington Commanders. I think him reuniting with Jaden Daniels, and obviously they played well together in LSU. Zach Ertz, they signed him, but I think it's really a one more year, and then he's probably going to retire. And some may say, well, they got Ben Sinnott, but I mean, he did nothing. Absolutely. He barely got on the field. They re-signed John Bates, who's one of the best blocking tight ends in the NFL. It may be early yet, but I'm kind of milling it in when it comes to Ben Sinnott. I think they might have just made a mistake. And bringing in a guy like Mason Taylor, who has familiarity with Jaden Daniels in that offense, we saw how much he relied on Zach Ertz, towards the end of the regular season and definitely within the playoffs. So bringing a guy like him, who they have that familiarity together, I think it could be a great fit.
Could be. I mean, I'm not ready to give up on Ben Sinnott. That's kind of why I avoided the Commanders, just because.
You thought about it though.
No, not really. I didn't consider it. That's why, because I'm not ready to give up on Sinnott.
Well, you wanted the Broncos to draft Sinnott. You're a Sinnott guy.
I did, yeah. I was a Sinnott guy, but I also just know, sometimes it takes a little bit for tight ends to develop. It's, even though we have seen some tight ends recently just come in and dominate in rookie years, I mean, those are very rare, and tight end's a position that usually takes a little bit of time. So I'm not ready to just mail it in on Sinnott just yet.
Fair enough. All right, let's head over to our next guy, Harold Fannin Jr., tight end of Bowling Green. Had a fantastic season last year. Joe, where would you like to see him go?
Yeah, this is another interesting spot for him, Steve, but I'd like to see him go to the Kansas City Chiefs. Travis Kelce's not getting any younger, most likely just playing one more year here. And, I know they got Noah Gray, but they do like to utilize that tight end position. And I think Harold Fannin would be really interesting to pair him up with Andy Reid, and just the way that Reid would be able to scheme up some plays for him, really utilize his talents. And, he's kind of like a flex tight end / wide receiver there that they could utilize him as. And I think it'd be really interesting.
This pains me to say this because I don't want it to happen, but I agree with you. I think that Harold Fannin, I have him also, the best landing spot is the Kansas City Chiefs. Travis Kelce isn't getting any younger.
Yeah.
Who knows how much longer he has to play? It's on a year-by-year basis at this point. And if you look at Travis Kelce, he ran a 4.61 40-yard dash. And Harold Fannin Jr. ran a 4.71, which ultimately I think raised a lot of eyebrows, and maybe he ends up dropping a little bit as a result. But his play speed, his pure yards after the catch, what he's able to do. A lot of people see him kind of more of an H-back type of tight end, but they use Travis Kelce all over the place, and they're extremely creative. So if they bring in a guy like Harold Fannin, you're telling me that Andy Reid can't figure out a way to get this guy involved and come up with a game plan? It makes me nervous, honestly, because I feel like he's one of those guys that everybody's going to be like, well, the metrics aren't good, and he's not that athletic. Look at his RAS score. And all of a sudden he drops, and then the Chiefs get him and just, gets right, puts right in their lap.
Yep, I could totally see it, and that. Like I agree with you. That Andy Reid is just going to know how to utilize this guy, and he will be that chess piece for him, and everyone will be kicking themselves like, how did we let this guy go to Kansas City?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, he's very talented. I mean, I believe didn't he lead the FBS in receiving yards or something like that for a tight end? I mean, it was incredible.
Yeah, I know he had a really good year. I mean, not sure if he led all of FBS there, but I mean, definitely was the number one go-to guy for Bowling Green for sure.
Yeah, I just think at the end of the day, it's too much of a Kansas City type pick. I would hate it for NFL reasons.
I would too.
Dynasty, I mean, you can't beat it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I would absolutely hate him to see him go to the Chiefs, but if I looking to take a late round flyer on a tight end, I mean, I'd be hoping that he does go to the Chiefs.
Last guy we're going to be talking about here, a guy that you have a lot of interest in, Joe, and we thought we should include him on here, and I hope I say it correctly, Oronde Gadsden, tight end from Syracuse, Joe. Where would you like to see him go?
Yeah, I ultimately chose the Denver Broncos for Oronde Gadsden.
Interesting.
Sean Payton keeps talking about the Joker position. They got Evan Ingram in that role. And that's really what Gadsden, he's a converted wide receiver to tight end with Syracuse. He did have a Liz Frank injury in 2023. He lost the whole season. But, he's got the bloodlines. His dad was a former NFL wide receiver. And really think, similarly to Fannin with Andy Reid, I feel like this would just be another chess piece for Sean Payton to utilize. And he's really, that big wide receiver big slot / tight end positional player.
I would have loved him had it not been Evan Ingram going there. I could see almost like a Jimmy Graham type of player.
Well, that's where I think, Evan Ingram's not there for the long term. So even in short term, Evan Ingram's there, but I think, they could draft Gadsden and he, grooms into that position. But I could see the value being there for him.
So I went with the New York Giants. And the reason being is, from what I understand, he's a very good receiving tight end, but his blocking could use some help. So if he's going to get on the field, more than likely he's either just going on a receiving down or you're looking at 12 personnel. Well, if you're in 12 personnel, one of the tight ends is going to be a good blocker. And Theo Johnson, coming out of Penn State last year, is a really, really good blocker. So, and now mind you, but his receiving game is more of potential. I think both of them could kind of really complement each other. And who do the Giants really have outside Malik Neighbors? So to me, having a guy like Gaston in there, I think those tight ends could complement each other. I'm just trying to think about how we can get as much playing time as possible and for a team that makes sense. And so I went with the Giants.
Yeah, that's going to be the tough thing for Gadsden. He's projected to be like a 4th or 5th round pick. So, depending on the team he goes, he's probably not looking, unless an injury happens, he's probably not looking to gain like much playing time right away.
No, and that's the concern. And it kind of reminds me of Johnny Wilson.
Yep. Johnny Wilson, correct.
Yeah. A guy who really didn't, is he a tight end? Is he a wide receiver? And I wonder if Gaston kind of has that similar treatment.
Johnny Wilson's a big guy. Like Gadsden is.
Gaston, though.
Yeah, but he's not like a
He's
giant.
Not as big as Johnny Wilson. I agree with that. But
it's like Johnny Wilson was like a big wide receiver and just slow. So they put him at tight end. Like Gadsden's got like a receiver body and yet plays tight end. That's why he's not the best blocker. Still has to work on that. So there is there is some work that he's got to put in to become a more polished NFL player.
So that does it for this episode. We talked about the best rookie tight end landing spots for the top tight end prospects for Dynasty Fantasy Football. If you enjoyed this episode, go ahead and check out our most recent episodes as well. We did quarterbacks, running backs, receivers. And in our next episode, we're going to be talking about the top IDP prospects. You're not going to want to miss that. Thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time.